listening to Matt Loves Cameras. Film cameras, instant cameras,
and everything analog photography related.
Matt Loves Cameras!
Polaroid fans, do I have a treat for you? In this episode, I interview one of the most knowledgeable SX70 repairers on the planet. So much so, people have even called him the Polaroid Whisperer. I'm of course talking about Jake Bright, the instant camera guy, and I chat to Jake live from his home in Melbourne, Australia. I'm Matt Murray, and this is Matt Loves Cameras. Hello my friends, how are you? I hope you are well, wherever you are all around the world. Welcome to episode 46 of Matt Loves Cameras, and I've got a real treat for you today. I have Jake Bright, the instant camera guy, a fascinating interview where Jake gives us some of his wisdom about Polaroids, repairing Polaroids, modifying cameras, all that kind of stuff, and it really is a great listen, so I hope you will enjoy it. Before we kick off into the interview, I'll just give you a little rundown on what I've been up to. So I was actually out shooting last night in the beautiful seaside suburb of Wynnum here in Brisbane. I dropped my daughter off at her dance and theatre practice, and I headed down to the seaside with some cameras. And one of the cameras I had was an SX70, which was actually restored by Jake. So I got my SX70 out with a pack of film that recently arrived from the Netherlands. I bought a big load of film from the Netherlands, a Polaroid store there, and the colours in that latest batch of SX70 film are beautiful. So I certainly recommend, if you do like Polaroids, make sure you get fresh film. Try and get it direct from the factory in the Netherlands or from the US Polaroid store. That's probably your best bet if you want those beautiful colours. There really is very lovely, the latest emulsions coming out of Polaroid. I have heard some people sort of bag Polaroid a little bit, and I can understand that. It's not exactly the most hasn't been the most stable of films over the last few years, but I think the results they're coming out with lately are really, really wonderful. Now, I did hear friends of the show, Jeff and Gabe from My Dreamer Cameras, talk about Polaroid, and they weren't very, how shall I put this, they weren't very charitable about the film Polaroid is producing. But I'd certainly suggest that if you haven't shot Polaroid for a while, the integral film, the SX70 or the I-Type or the 600 series, try and get some fresh film and give it another go, because I really think the latest emulsions are really, really getting much better than they have been in previous years. Keep shooting those Polaroids. Now, speaking of Jeff and Gabe, of course, they appeared in episode 45 of Matt Loves Cameras. It was a really wonderful 2-hour chat with the guys. We discussed our fantasy cameras that we've never owned, over 10 rounds, and it was a really wonderful conversation, and I thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed the chat with the guys. It was actually the fastest ever episode of Matt Loves Cameras to get to 500 downloads. I think we got there in just under 6 days. Jeff and Gabe pulling in some numbers for good old Matt Loves Cameras, which is fantastic. So thanks to the guys for that. Really appreciate it. Now, after today's interview, I'll give you an update on the Lomachrome Purple competition. I will be revealing our special guest judge. Very, very exciting. And I'll also be giving you a bit of hope. If you haven't got your entries ready just yet, it's okay, don't panic. There is still time, but keep listening to the end of the episode for more details about the Lomachrome Purple competition, which of course will turn into a community zine. Very, very exciting. Today, I have a real treat for you, listeners. I chat to a man who goes by many names. Officially, his name is Jake Bright, but many people here in Australia who belong to Australian film photography Facebook groups will know him as Jake Threepwood. His business is called The Instant Camera Guy, and he's even been called the Polaroid Whisperer. We talk about how Jake got into repairing cameras, his pack film camera modifications, how he felt when pack film was discontinued, how he pivoted his business into repairing SX70s, what kind of cameras he personally likes to shoot with, his interesting advice on gas, which I absolutely love, and we also talk about the other vintage items he's learned to fix, and also finally we talk about Polaroid Go. It is a fascinating conversation, and I really hope you will enjoy it. Now, just an apology before the episode, I actually recorded this over Zoom. Now, my podcast mic wasn't working with Zoom for some reason, so I just used my internal mic on my Mac, and the sound quality from me isn't great. It's okay, you can still understand what I'm saying, but it isn't great. Jake sounds brilliant, so that's all you really need, but I will try and sort that out for future interviews, of course. So my guest today on Matt Loves Cameras needs no introduction to many of our Australian listeners. If you've ever seen a post in a local film photography Facebook group asking for help or repair advice for a Polaroid SX70, only one person gets tagged over and over and over again. I am, of course, talking about Jake Threepwood, also known as the Instant Camera Guy. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm doing very, very, very well. For the record, by the way, because not a lot of people know this about me, Jake Threepwood isn't actually my real surname.
Oh, okay, yep.
My real surname is Bright. Yep. Threepwood is my Facebook name, which is actually the name of one of my favorite video game camera.
That's right.
The characters.
I remember. Thinking. Now, I think. Islands. Do you want me to redo the intro with Jake Bright?
No, that's fine because it comes up all the time, so it's absolutely hilarious. I think we should keep it in.
I remember that now. I remember seeing it somewhere on the internet, Jake Threepwood, and I thought, hang on, is that? Yeah, so I remember that now. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, no, it's funny because so many people know me, I guess, through the forums, where I'm just hanging around on Facebook, that they often associate with that name. So I think I've been name dropped countless times on various different social media posts and podcasts and whatever as Jake Threepwood. So I'll answer to both.
Excellent. Good to hear. I guess as long as they've got a broken Polaroid SX70 coming your way, I guess you don't mind too much what they call you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let's go back in time a little bit and tell me a little bit about yourself and how you became the Instant Camera Guy.
Well, it's a bit of an interesting story, and pretty much what happened. I've always been a tinkerer of sorts, right? I grew up with a dad who was a mechanic by trade, and grew up restoring cars with him. So over the years, we had Mustangs and Minis and all sorts of stuff. So I grew up with a very mechanically based childhood of constantly being in the shed helping him out. And my dad was also a former wedding DJ by profession. Oh, cool. And he worked in the hi-fi industry for many years. So I grew up with a lot of, what you call analog technology, a lot of turntables, record players. And so long before I was ever refurbishing cameras, obviously I was helping him restore cars. And I got into refurbishing record players probably at the age of sort of 15 or 16, taking them apart and figuring out how they work. So I've always been as I said, a bit of a tinkerer. And I think that my approach in terms of especially being involved in photography is a bit of an interesting one, because I always started with the technology first before the artistic side of things.
So you started repairing cameras before you actually became interested in taking photos?
Yeah, legitimately. In fact, it was I've been doing this, I think, since it'd be 9 years. So it has to be 2012 or something like that. And it was only the end of 2013 that I sort of realized, I think I've been doing it longer than that. I think it's just officially ABN registered since 2012. But I realized and made it a New Year's resolution, because I was like, holy moly, I've got all this very professional photography gear that I never use for what it's actually intended, just simply because I'd come across it and refurbished it and it works, but I'd never actually used it. So I never got into really shooting film or taking photos as an artistic outlet until quite several years into actually doing the repair side of things. But the reason that I guess I migrated from cars and record players onto cameras can be traced back to my brother. It's all his fault. at the time I was studying media in high school. So I've always had an interest in sort of film and that side. Like I was always interested in motion picture and cinematography, which I guess is closely related to film. And he, at the time, wanted to buy a little Diana. Like at the time, lomography was just becoming a big thing, and he wanted to buy a little Diana Mini for his girlfriend. And he was like, "Oh, Jake, do you know anything about these little film cameras? Like, can you even still buy film anymore?" And all this kind of stuff. And I sort of was like, well, first of all, Jesse, you do realize that media and photography are two different subjects at school, right? Like I have no idea anything about photography. But I looked into it for him. I did the research for him because I guess I was a bit more knowledgeable. And what sort of had made me click, something sort of clicked in my brain where I started to realize that I had grown up as a millennial throughout the 90s on the verge of technology going from analog to digital, whether it be the rise of the internet age, the rise of computing, the rise of mobile phones, all that kind of stuff. We had gone from, using cassette tapes to MP3s. And I had lived through that period. And I started to realize that all of my childhood photos, which my parents had taken on their little Canon Sure Shot, just a little 35 mil, they bought it at the airport one day camera. It was nothing special, but they absolutely blew out of the water anything that my parents' little 5 megapixel digital point and shoot could do. Like it wasn't even a comparison. Yeah. And so I started to think, right, maybe I should get a camera that shoots film because I was going to Bali in a month for a holiday. So since the lomography camera was too expensive for my student budget, I bought a Holga, a little 135 BC. That was my first ever camera. Yep. And when I was in Bali, they still processed film over there. It was $2 Australian to buy a roll of Fuji 400. Wow. And developing with Prince Matt was $2.
Wow. So did you shoot a lot of film on holiday?
Oh, absolutely. I think I must have shot 40 rolls of film because it didn't matter. Like it was It was so cheap. It was cheaper than what I was spending on drinks, and I just shot a lot. And as a result, I fell in love with it and just started researching all things film photography related. And I eventually stumbled across Polaroids. Of course, this is a good 10 years ago when you could still buy Fuji peel apart film. So for those that have never shot one of the automatic land cameras, those take a very strange 4.5 or 3 volt battery, which is no longer made. So if you want to use one, you have to modify it to AAAs. Yep. So I bought one of those that was pre-restored for peel apart film. I think I shot 2 packs before deciding, this is too expensive. I'm a poor student, can't afford it. So I sold the cameras because I needed money. And literally half an hour after this camera was gone, I was like, I really missed that thing. So I hopped on eBay, bought a cheaper one that wasn't restored because I figured, it's just a battery compartment. How hard can it be? And I asked my dad, I said, you know how to use a soldering iron, right? He goes, yeah, sure I do. So he showed me how to pick up a soldering iron and that really started it. And it evolved from there. I ended up going to the UK with my partner at the time, and I picked up a few Polaroid 600s. This is right as Impossible Project was starting. Yeah. And I brought them back. I used them for a friend's birthday. Again, I needed money, so I sold them. And I sold them for a little bit more than I paid for them. And it was actually my mum. So it's my brother and my mum's fault. My mum's fault definitely for the business side of things, but it was my mum who then goes, Jake, you picked up those things for £5 in the UK and now you've sold them for $50. Just because you got them, proved that they were working. She goes, if you could do that a few times, that's a good little hobby business for you. And I thought, well, yeah, it is. So I started buying them from the US, and this is back in the glory days of Kevin Rudd being the PM, and we were, surviving the financial crisis, dollar for dollar with the US. And I could basically purchase a Polaroid 600 shipped for $20 if I bought a few of them at once. Wow. Yeah. So I started, at that point, I was basically, polishing any scuffs off them. I wasn't really repairing them so much, but ensuring that they worked, fully testing them, guaranteeing them, and just selling them on Gumtree. And then my friend Haley was like, Jake, do they all just come in black? So she goes, can't you paint them or something? Like make a pink one or a blue one? And I thought, well, sure. So I started taking them apart, and I taught myself how to dismantle a 600, how to repaint them different colors. And by learning to dismantle them, I learned how to swap flashes and repair shutters. And basically it just evolved from there. And then I went back to the Type 100 peeler parts. So in my early years of the business, I was mainly known for converting them to use manual lenses and shutters from a Graflex or a Tomanon 127mm lens or something like that to give it a better performance. So you got manual control of shutter speed and you got an f4.7 aperture. And that's what I was known for. I did SX70s on the side. And sort of after Fuji Peel Apart became obsolete and discontinued, I focused on SX70s and have been doing that ever since, basically. And now that's my current specialty, I guess.
So let's talk about those peel apart cameras, because I think I bought from you a few years ago. I bought one of the peel apart not peel apart cameras, but the back film cameras from you. How many, have you gone from doing, 5 a week pack film cameras to doing 0? What's the change been in the last few years with the discontinuation of film?
Whenever there's been like a super traumatic event and people go like, I remember where I was when I saw the
moon
Twin
landing
Towers.
or the Twin Tower. Yeah.
We all have that.
Berlin
Wall have
Wall.
that one vivid memory. Obviously, the two scenarios are not comparable, but
Yes.
I remember exactly where I was when I heard that Fuji Peel Apart film had been discontinued. I had woken up. It was, I believe, a Saturday morning.
Yep.
And I'd rolled out of bed, checked my phone. It's about 8:30 in the morning. I'd slept in. And literally the first story on my Facebook feed is Fujifilm discontinued. And I just remember saying to Anna, oh.
Yeah.
And I just thought in my head, well, there goes what is basically 75% of my business model overnight evaporated. It was a really, really tragic loss, I think, for the film community. Now, fortunately, SuperSense, as you probably are aware, are continuing some form of peel apart film to this day. So it's not completely dead, but I would say that it's very much on life support. It's like the living dead, basically. So I encourage anyone, if you have a peel apart camera or you want to source one, do it while it lasts, because this is like the end of an era. It may not be around forever. We're talking about like a real cottage industry production for this peel apart film that's happening at the moment. So I'd highly recommend someone shoot it while you get your hands on it. But I really enjoyed the whole build aspect, because what I was doing with these peel apart cameras was unique. Like, a lot of people knew how to do a 127mm Tomanon conversion, but I focused a lot on focal lengths that were a little wider, around 105mm. And the best lens that I actually found for the peel apart cameras was a 110mm Zeiss lens called a Novenar. Yeah. And it was a triplet lens, multi-coated, had great multi-coating. It's from the 1950s. A 110mm lens was very close to 114mm, which is what the camera originally was. But this triplet lens had such a character. It was so swirly and had this really nice vignette in the corners. And the color rendition just absolutely popped if you used FP100C. And it was sort of what I really enjoyed doing, is being able to sort of customize, because I'd be able to put different leather panels on, and, I could do different colors if people wanted them. And just basically any lens that a customer wanted to use that was roughly 105 to 127 millimeters in focal length, I could install. And I really did enjoy the challenge of custom fitting stuff for clients and coming up with something that was very, very unique.
So how many of those did you do? Do you remember vaguely? And where's the furthest one you sent one to?
I definitely sent them to all corners of the globe. I know I sent one to Singapore. I sent one to the States.
Yep.
I might have even sent one to the UK. I actually have no idea how many custom peel apart cameras I would have made. It would have been somewhere between, I want to say roughly 50 or so, maybe. Yep. Which back then, in terms of my business, I've never advertised myself. I've always been strictly through word of mouth, and I would just list something on Gumtree if I had something to sell. So back then, I didn't really do so much repairs for other people. I would I would custom make them something if they commissioned me to, but I was mainly in the business of buying, refurbishing, and selling,
Sure.
which is very drastically different to what I did now. But when Peel Apart was discontinued, I basically used up all the spare parts that I had, sold off anything complete that took Peel Apart while you could still get the film. And shifted gears and basically just dove straight into doing SX70s instead, which actually worked out much better for me in terms of a business model and in terms of allowing me to expand and help a lot of other people. They are very complex cameras, SX70s, and they are a camera where even if you're a trained camera repair technician, you may not know how to repair an SX70 because they have more in common with computers than they do cameras. Like it's this very strange hybrid of electrical and mechanical engineering, which works in perfect harmony. It's unlike repairing anything else. Like, not only do you need to make sure that mechanically all of these switches are working, but you need to make sure that everything from an electrical perspective is working too, whether it be reseating microchips, reflowing solder, making sure traces aren't lifting, making sure there's no corrosion on parts or that the capacitors are working. It's like, it's unlike repairing anything else. And as far as I know, I'm the only one in the Southern Hemisphere really specializing. Like, there might be a few other people out there, but they're not actively doing it as a business that I know of, or there might be a few, I guess, people just doing some amateur repairs. But as far as like an official, like I'm the official repairman for Polaroid Australia. Like, if you call them up and ask, like, I got a camera, I need it repaired, they'll refer to me, which is pretty cool. So I know the guy from Brands Australia, they deal with Polaroid. So, like, as far as I know, it's just me. So it's it's sort of been an interesting journey for me because, like, all of the repair stuff that I've had to, I guess, learn has been all from scratch. Like, there's not really any tooling here in Australia. It's very isolated. The resources aren't the same. So most of the tools and knowledge that I've obtained, I've either had to make or invent.
You're listening to Matt Loves Cameras.
You started off by, battery converting, pack film cameras and doing conversions and lenses and reskinning and all that. So how then how did you then all of a sudden, did you just grab an SX70 and with your mechanical mind start taking them apart and working out what was wrong with them? I mean, have you found any handbooks or anything online, or did you ask anyone for help? Or
I mean, it's a really, really good question. What we got to bear in mind is when I started repairing SX70s, it was like Impossible Project had only just started. There was actually very, very little resources out there in terms of like being able to ask someone. The only resource available was a French blog called, the guy was called Kimi or something like that. And I think his website's down. It was Kimi's SX70 page and he had a bit of info there. There was a PDF repair manual of the SX70 floating around online, which I perused. But the issue with the official Polaroid repair manual is it's not helpful. It tells you how a camera works, but it doesn't explain any symptomatology or troubleshooting. And it also assumes that you have all of this very, very specific, very specialized electrical and mechanical tool set that only the factory had access to. Like for example, where the bellows connect to the body at the bottom, there is 2 screws at the front. Now that's easy to remove. It's a screw, right? As long as you got the right screwdriver bit, you can remove it. But at the back, there's 2 clips. And Polaroid's way of removing this clip was they had a special tool that looked like a pack of film with a lever attached to it. And you'd insert it into the camera, push down the lever, and it would send these 2 little spludges up at the end, which would pop the clips off. Like, who the hell has one of those tools? You know? And so the repair manual will be like, disassemble shutter and place on shutter testing unit number 3. And it's like, great, okay, I have none of this stuff. So when I was learning how to take them apart, it was literally like what you would hear of, like, these Soviet countries doing back in the day, where they took this piece of technology and was like, right, how does it work? Let's strip it and find out what makes it tick. It was like doing an autopsy, basically, and figuring out the anatomy. I had a few clues, but it was very much, I had to teach myself ways of getting inside certain parts that didn't exist. And as a result of that, like I actually feel, although it took me a long time, I feel like it was in some ways a better way to learn, because it made me think very much outside the box.
Sure.
To the point where I've been able to come up with a few techniques that no one else had ever heard of or tried before, such as the motor refurbishing, using a sanding block to file back the copper. I might just quickly explain that for anyone that's listening to the podcast. Inside the camera, at the beating heart of it, you've got a motor, which is what drives all the film eject mechanism. And basically, if that motor doesn't work, well, nothing else in the camera will work. And what happens is the bit that spins inside the motor is made of copper. And if you've ever seen the Statue of Liberty or anything copper that's left outside, you know it turns green with corrosion. Well, so does the spinny bit inside the motor. And if it gets corroded, the corrosive salt doesn't conduct electricity as well as copper, so it forms a barrier. Electricity can't flow, the motor doesn't spin. And over the years, basically everyone's solution to that I'd ever seen online was replace the motor, which is a good solution if you happen to have a stock of new old stock motors lying around. Like, where am I supposed to get those? all the way on this vast deserted island of Australia. So there's got to be a better way. And so I taught myself this way of sort of prying the motors open, taking out the rotor and polishing it so it goes back to copper. Mm-hmm. And when you put it back together and reinstall it, it runs like a V8 supercar. Like it's just boom, like comes back to life.
Yeah, I think it was, if people want to see that process, you do a whole load of, what do they call, Facebook Lives on your Facebook page. Yeah. So your Facebook page is facebook.com/instant camera guy. And after your Facebook Live is completed, obviously it gets posted to your page. So I think it was it last week? I actually saw you doing that process you've just explained. And I think it was maybe, maybe the 24th of April, the 23rd of April. So people want to see exactly what you're talking about there. They can go across to your Facebook page, Instant Camera Guy, and they can see all that happening in the past now, but it was live at the time.
Yeah, and those live videos, I absolutely love doing them. It was something that I did purely because of COVID happening. I basically, not that I was out all the time. I was obviously still repairing cameras, but I figured like a lot of people are going to be at home bored, not having much to do. So I figured since I had more time indoors and, my work cut my hours back a bit because, we couldn't work for as long. So I decided, well, why not just do the same repair that I always do, but to a live audience? I figured I'd be kind of like, you ever been to Chinatown and there's people making dumplings in the windows?
Yeah, people lining up watching them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like this, people really, really enjoyed it. And like I have people tuning in from all over the world. I got like this small little following in Singapore and in South America and in Poland asking me questions. So it was really, really fun in terms of just coming up with, I guess, a new format and showing everyone like some of the intricacies that go into actually restoring one of these cameras properly. Because I think what some people tend to assume is, and I see this all the time on forums, and they say, I've just bought this refurbished SX70, where all they've done is really just change the skin, right? They peel off the old leather and then they put a new one on. And nothing's actually been done. And I'm like, well, that's not really refurbishing. That's like reskinning an SX70. And the thing with SX70s is, and I've explained this a lot in my live stream videos, and I'm just going to keep explaining it to the end of time because it's something that people don't realize, is the SX70 came out of the oven half-baked. It was not something that was finished. Yep. And the reason for that is Edwin Land, who is the founder and owner of Polar, and I'm sure some people listening to the podcast might know the story, but I definitely recommend looking up Dr. Edwin Land. He spent the equivalent of $1 billion in research and development throughout the 60s building this thing. so much about the SX70 had to be invented from scratch because it didn't exist, right? Like the way they stuck the leather panels to the body, they needed a glue, so they just invented double-sided tape. Like it had never existed, so they just we'll just invent that. And then they needed a computerized microcontroller for exposure. Oh, just invent that. We'll send the design to a PCB maker. And the curved mirror in the viewfinder never existed. So they used a Cray supercomputer to come up with that curved design and do the math for it. Like it was mind-boggling how much research and development went into this. And towards the end, once Land had spent like $1 billion, his shareholders and the rest of the company were like, dude, you have got to get something to the market and recoup these losses. It's like a black hole of money that you're spending. And so they rushed it to the market. And as a result, they had a lot of design flaws, lots and lots and lots and lots of design flaws. Like the original batteries the packs used would leak and turn the film blue. They used this really crappy quality metal for the door latch, which often snaps.
Yep.
They had this little plastic coupler on the drive shaft for the motor, which always snaps. They had like so many things, like poor quality soldering. The early Fairchild PCBs that they used two types of manufacturers for the PCB, Fairchild and Texas Instruments.
Yep.
And those Fairchild ones are just like rubbish quality and are prone to spontaneous failure. The light meters are prone to corrosion. So if you want to get one working, you really need to have it completely torn down and all of those things that I mentioned fixed, at least preemptively, so that it performs at its best. And I think what's put some people off shooting with an SX70 if they've had subpar results is they've probably done it from a camera that's been, just tested as is, like from some, from grandpa's attic, fresh from 1978, untouched, or stored in an attic somewhere. And things age and get gummy over time. And as a result, SX70s in general are just prone to overexposing the film. So once you rectify that and service the camera, they tend to work a hell of a lot better.
So that was one of my questions. What typically goes wrong with an SX70? But you've described all those little things there. Are these all sort of
what
checks?
Doesn't go wrong, Matt? It depends on the model as to what the most common faults are. I always get asked, what's the best SX70, right? What is best in inverted commas? And truthfully, they all have pros and cons.
Sure.
Like the Fairchild shutter that I mentioned before, right, is very prone because it doesn't use microchips. It uses this flimsy piece of tape with all the transistors attached to that, and then like a blob of acrylic covering it.
Yep. So
if they flex too much, the little copper strands inside snap and the circuits don't work. So the shutters just fail randomly.
Wow.
So if they work brilliantly. Like they're actually a really reliable design in theory. It's just the execution of how they made the components was very poor and they're prone to fail. But the irony with that is the light sensors that those Fairchild boards use are not prone to corrosion. They tend to just expose dead on, even 40 years later, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Whereas the Texas Instruments boards, at least the earlier ones, are way more reliable in terms of the chips, but the electric eyes are more prone to corrosion, leading to overexposure.
Yep.
And the later TI boards, which were made in Taiwan, have very, very, very poor quality solder where things can look joined together, but there's actually no electrical connection. So whenever I see a TI board, I always resolder it anyway.
Sure.
So there are pros and cons. Like the SLR 680, for example, is considered the pinnacle. It's got easily the best quality motor, right? The motors on those very, very rarely corrode ever.
Sure.
It's got really good quality ribbon cables. But the mirror that's inside the back, which folds up, the silicon on that is not as good a quality as the SX70. So sometimes the mirrors will fall off and rattle around inside the camera. No. So it's all swings and roundabouts. You'll have. And it depends, of course, how a camera gets treated. I haven't mentioned things like physical damage and cracked body panels and stuff. But, definitely the most common things I see are definitely chrome and tan models. I see the most. But snap drive shafts, overexposing because of either gummy shutter blades or a dodgy electric eye. And that's probably the two most common things. Or I'll get a camera that just doesn't run at all because the motor's corroded.
Sure. And are all those things fixable? I mean, do you have a lot of spare parts there in your garage, or how do you manage all this?
Yeah. So typically everything on an SX70 is repairable. There's really only one thing I would say is a critical failure point on an SX70. And what I mean by critical failure is it would be easier to get a different camera than to fix this one. Yep. And that's that on that gear train along the side, those gears are made of plastic.
Yep.
And some of the gears are riveted into the metal body by a factory machine.
Sure.
And as such are irreplaceable.
Right.
So if one of those teeth on the gear gets worn, it will only spin a certain amount before it stops, rendering the camera useless. And because that rivet, like to replace it would involve taking apart the entire drivetrain, somehow tapping the rivet out, somehow replacing it so that it's as sturdy as it originally was, then going through all the hassle of rebuilding the entire thing all over again.
Yeah.
The thing is, to get that spare part, you would have to have a good working other body. So I would just restore that body.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would be literally easier to swap every single other body panel onto that working drivetrain than fix that drivetrain. So that's basically the only thing that would absolutely brick the camera. Just about everything else you can replace. It's just a matter of if you can find the spare parts. So
Sure.
Usually if a customer has a camera that is beyond repair for whatever reason, or it's not economically feasible to repair, I encourage them to donate it to me as spare parts. That's how I get my spare parts.
Cool.
You can't buy modern SX70 parts with the exception of a few limited electrical pieces. You cannot buy new parts. So I have to recycle them from old cameras. And I've got quite a collection, but it's not uncommon for, like right now, I don't have any spare shutters.
Right.
I've used up all my supply. So I don't have anything that I can use as spares if someone comes to me with a dead shutter. But usually the thing I like about SX70s is because they were built in the 70s, right? But they were designed in the 60s. And in the 60s, things were built to last.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Things were often built to be user serviceable, or if they were tech serviceable, it was designed so that there was a way to do it. You know what I mean? Like you don't get that these days with any kind of modern camera or device or anything like that. It's generally infinitely harder to repair something modern these days.
You're listening to
Matt Loves Cameras.
That's the one you're going to use.
So I sent you down a couple of cameras. This is going back a couple of years ago. I picked up a beautiful SX70. It was actually a dentist. I think he'd passed away, and his kids sold off these cameras. So they had an beautiful SX70. Looked like it was in mint condition cosmetically, or fairly close to mint. I put a cartridge in, and it kind of whirred, but it didn't sound particularly great. So I bought that for $60. I thought, this is great. And the pack turned out all blue. So I sent it down to you. Now I'm just looking back at the conversation we had back then. I sent it down to you I sent you down 2 cameras. And I think what happened was you were a bit stumped. And when someone has a reputation for being the best Polaroid repair person around and they come back and say, I'm a bit stumped, I was starting to worry a little bit. But it sounds like, just looking back at this conversation, I think you've replaced the circuit board on the shutter.
Yeah.
Is that a common thing that you've seen since, or was mine a one-off?
Yeah, so I actually did a great video on this a few weeks ago where I talked about the intermittent issue.
Right.
And it's a repairman's worst nightmare. So I obviously get a lot of cameras to repair, and I can vaguely remember details of your cameras. But what can happen, because it's a circuit board, right? You've got two microchips which control things like how fast the shutter opens and when it should open and when it should close. Yep. And then you've got a little chip that's responsible for reading the light coming from the electric eye.
Sure.
And effectively what happens is electrics will fail one of two ways. You can either get the trace, the actual metal copper circuit that goes to the components, that might fail, and that's a pretty easy fix. You can either put a bodge wire going from one end to another, or you can just repair it with solder. Mm-hmm. But if the actual chip itself fails, that is generally going to result in a lot more intermittent, bizarre problems. So, like inside a microchip is basically just a smaller version of a circuit board, but it's microscopic. You can't fix it, right? It's all compressed into a little silicon brick. But silicon degrades over time. No microchips last forever, although they're pretty damn reliable. But if corrosion gets inside the chip and forms like a weird little short circuit, or it eliminates part of a circuit, you can get just about any number of strange behaviors happening on an SX70 that you could ever imagine. And it's so variable. So the only way to really, it's not a process of ruling it in. You have to rule it out. You have to make sure everything else works. And the simplest way to test that is, and I think that's how I fixed your camera, I took your shutter off completely because I was like, what the hell is going on with this thing? And I put on a different shutter and then it worked properly, right? Yeah. And so that tells me, great, well, the body clearly works. It's the brains that's at fault. So, and I had that the other day in the video. I had this customer's camera, which 8 times out of 10 would fire perfectly. And then I think it would go into like a massive long exposure mode for absolutely no reason. Just an intermittent problem. And not something that we can really do anything about. I fixed all the solder, resoldered everything. It worked better after I had my hands on it, but I could not get it to function. But look, that just happens sometimes. So it's definitely something that I see. The fortunate thing is there's light at the end of the tunnel. There is a project spearheaded in I think, Barcelona by a guy called Joaquin de Prada, and he heads the Open SX70 project, which you may have heard about. Listeners might be familiar. And this is effectively a open source Arduino-based replacement for the PCB, which is fully programmable with USB connection. And it basically replaces the entire brains of the camera. So it's a brand new PCB, brand spanking new, no dodgy 40-year-old microchips. And I was very, very fortunate enough to have one donated to me. I got a prototype sent over and I wired it up onto my personal SX70, and it just works amazingly. And he's eventually planning on turning it into a commercial product. The last I heard, maybe by the end of this year. But it's been a long and ongoing process. But it's very cool. It's got a little dongle you can insert into the flash, like Mint's Time Machine, which gives you manual control of shutter speed if you want it. Alternatively, you can just set it to either 600 or SX70 mode, and it exposes perfectly. It's really, really cool.
Wow. So in effect, what that would replace, like an ND filter in an SX70, you just put this thing on top and you can, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you can just literally set it to whatever speed you want, and you don't even need to use it with the dongle. Once you've set your ISO, you can take the dongle off.
Wow. You
just take the dongle off, and it has flash memory, so it remembers whatever you set it to. So really cool stuff. Like the future is, like all of this modern Arduino-based stuff is really the future of where this kind of technology is going. And it's really great to see. So I'm very excited for that in the future, because if that becomes a commercial product, I'll be able to buy some from him and fix customers' SX70s that have a fried shutter. It'll be a bit expensive. I'm assuming it'll be like an extra $100, but you'll end up with something that, like, really, that's the brains of the camera are the bit that is like hard to replace because it's electrical. But I'm very excited to see how that goes.
And have you ever had a camera that you couldn't fix?
Yeah. I'm not a
wizard, not a magic wand.
Look, I always say, like, I'm a repairman. I'm not Jesus. I'm not a miracle worker. And of course, I have seen things that come through my way that are just beyond my capabilities. And that's why you buy from an official ABN registered business, because if I can't fix it, there's no charge, or if I've charged you for this repair and it fails and it's under warranty and I can't get it to work, I'll refund your money. So, but I see things that come across my way that I'm like, look, I'm sorry, this camera's too far gone. The chips are bad, but look, the good thing is it doesn't happen very often. 95% of SX70s that come my way, even if they're utterly untested and look like they live at the bottom of the ocean, can be coaxed back to life with enough CPR and enough surgery. But yeah, you do get some that are bricked that I can't really do anything with. But even then, those ones that are stuffed are great for harvesting for parts. One broken SX70 might give life to 5 other SX70s as a result of that. Yeah. So it's, always worth it. And if you've got one that's absolutely fried, like if anyone's listening and you want to make sure that you help out, so like send it to me for parts, because I'm always in the market for some. Sometimes I end up with enough parts I can actually build a brand new camera out of them. And that's what I'm going to do on a live stream, hopefully a little later today.
Cool.
But yeah, I'm always in the market for parts to help other people out, because it's the only way of getting your hands on spares is getting donations or using cameras that were beyond repair. Yeah.
Now, we've spoken about the SX70 models, but what about the later SX70 sonar models and then the 600 series sonar models like the SLR 680? Do you get many of those through? What are they like to repair?
Yeah, so I recently had an SX70 sonar come through. There's a guy, or at least he was here in Melbourne, Victoria. He was selling a bunch of new old stock SX70 sonars. Now, these were all, technically new old stock, but they'd all been stored somewhere very, very moist, and none of them work. So if you're out there and you see this guy with this too good to be true sounding deal on a brand new SX70 sonar, please know that they do not function. But I was able to coax life back into this. It does need the sensor replaced on the autofocus because it doesn't work. But the really cool thing I like about SX70s is they're all modular, with the exception of very, very early ones from the earliest month of production. Everything after 1972 right through to the SLR 680 is effectively you can swap parts. So you can make a silver SLR 680 if you want to. You can swap it with chrome body panels. You can swap shutters over. You can put an SX70 shutter on an SLR 680 body. You can put a sonar shutter on an early SX70 body. You can swap everything because it's all the same design. They're all the same pins. They're all the same thread of screws. So you can really do a lot. So I do repair SLR 680s. I do repair SX70 sonars. The biggest thing that goes wrong with sonars is it's got a little, what they call a rotary encoder, which counts the amount of times that the cog spins to control the focus, which then sets the distance. And that often breaks. And there's someone in America making brand new reproduction parts for that. So he's going to send me some very shortly within the next few weeks. And then I hopefully will have an SX70 sonar to repair in a live stream video, which I've never done before, not live. So that'll be interesting if that happens. But yeah, they're basically the same. There's a few tiny little variants with how the shutter works, but they're all modular. So I see them all the time. Any folding SLR, I can repair basically within limits. Like if something's completely trashed, or the chips are dead, well, there's not a lot I can do unless I get a whole different spare shutter. But the one thing to know is with sonars and the SLR 680, the more features you have, the more things can go wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a bit of a just an old school mentality of me, because I grew up with all these old cars, and modern technology is great with all the feature sets, right? But sometimes I can't help but see all these modern feature sets on smart devices and things, and just think like, oh man, that's just like 5 more features that are going to break.
Go wrong. That's right. Yeah.
And the more you build into one without making it able to be taken apart, only one function has to die before it's rendered broken. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And what about the rigid body cameras? Because I've picked up probably 20 600 series, the rigid body cameras, and I think I've only ever had one that didn't work. I mean, do you repair them? Do you ever get them in? What's your experience with them?
Yeah, look, I want to say that I do repair them in inverted commas. Those cameras they were designed by a guy whose sole mission was make this able to be assembled with basically 0 screws. So the whole thing is plastic tabbed together.
Yep.
And as a result, they are very hard to completely take apart and dismantle without snapping components. Like the risk is quite high.
Sure.
With that said, they're also of the type of design which is just about invincible. Like they are so simple and so well built, and the quality of plastic is so high that when they work, and the only thing that will really damage them is if they get stored somewhere moist and things corrode.
Yep.
Or if they get dropped.
Sure.
Like physical damage, and that can break inside bits that move. I can swap out components. I can swap bodies. I can repaint them. I can swap flash units over as long as I have spares. But you can't really, other than replacing a flash capacitor, you can't really repair them like you would repair an SX70. But again, they are modular. Like even the early squarer box type 600s and the later rounder type, like the inside mechanism is exactly the same. It's only the body shape that changes. So you can actually swap parts over. And that's actually what I started off doing. It's interesting though, because you get inside them without any tools.
Sure, yeah.
You just have,
yeah.
You need a flat screwdriver to pry things, but that's about it. They're very unique to work on. But the good thing about them, like if someone's buying one untested, all you really need to do is bring a pack of film. And if it works, and it should continue to work just about forever.
That was always my thing. I would take empty cartridge, which I knew had the batteries were working, and I would always test the camera. And as long as it had the beautiful sound, it was good to go. And it was all going so well until I bought that SX70 that I had to send down to you. So is that a rule with testing it with an empty cartridge? Is that typically that will work okay with the rigid bodies, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything with the folding ones? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, look. Even if you get an SX70, you put the empty pack in and it whirs to life. It's not a matter of if, but when it breaks, especially if it is an early chrome and tan model, because as I mentioned before, there's a plastic drive shaft coupler, which like eventually it'll snap, right? It's an absolute guarantee. I can't tell you when it will snap, but it will snap eventually.
Sure.
So when you factor in things like pick arm lubricant drying out and electric eyes corroding and solder being suboptimal, it's worth getting it overhauled so that you know it's going to work as good as it possibly can anyway. Sure. But yeah, you can still test an SX70 like that, and certainly if it whirs to life and it fires the shutter properly, well, you know it's a great candidate for getting restored because it'll have no major issue. Sure. It'll just need a bit of preventative maintenance rather than fixing a problem. But even that, if you put a pack in and nothing happens, it can still probably be brought to life. You just have to, it just depends on what the problem is. But it's very uncommon for me not to be able to bring an SX70 to life in some capacity. Like they are very repairable.
If you would like to support this podcast, why not buy our dad a coffee? Visit ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/Matt Loves Cameras. And buy him a coffee for just $3.
And what about, I mean, you called, your Facebook page is Instant Camera Guy. What about that other side of instant photography, which is, of course, Instax? Do you ever repair any Instax cameras?
I get asked this all the time. My answer to that is no. The thing with Instax cameras, they're so cheap. Like you can pick up an Instax wide, like the earlier round ones, for like $100 or less.
Yeah.
I think even the modern like Instax 300. I haven't price checked them. I'm going to Google that right now while we're talking.
They're about $100, a bit over $100, aren't they? Or
yeah, I see it wide 300. Let me just find the camera. Yeah, it's like literally $106.
Yeah,
with a whole bunch of film is like like $120. Yeah, it's just like I can't repair it for less than that.
Yeah.
The other thing is they are very plastic. If you look at the rear door for an Instax wide 300, the clip is this spring-loaded bit of plastic. Yeah, that'll snap one. And when that snaps, you're going to have to come up with some kind of a latch to install on it because that door will never close again. Gaffer tape or something, right? You're going to have to blue tack that shut. And the internals, the electrics are teeny tiny. It's like a cell phone in there. Like the PCB on a 670, because it's designed in the 60s, is big, right? So it's easy to work on. It's like microscopic inside an Instax, the little controller units and stuff. So just from my perspective, just because like it's not a realistic business model for like. No. Let me put it this way, Matt. If I found one on the side of the road and it didn't work, and I wanted it for myself, I may try and fix it, but it's just not a viable. Like I would be there for hours. You can't buy parts from Fuji. Like you can't contact them and be, can I have a new XYZ? Yeah. And even if they did, the cost of parts would just about the parts of repair. You can get a new one for that, and so it's sadly part of this sort of it's this disposable economy that we sort of live in at the moment, where everything is planned obsolescence and cheap and cheerful and replaceable. It's like fast photography basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they just don't build them like they used to. The funny thing about an SX70 is like, well, yeah, okay, they do have a few design flaws and they can break down, but on the flip side, they also can be repaired. Yeah. So can Instax, but it's a lot harder and it's not cost effective.
Now, tell me about, I always think I shoot both Polaroid and Instax, but to me there is a special magic about Polaroid, not just because you've got this beautiful history, these beautiful vintage cameras from the 70s onwards, well, even before the 70s, but to me there's just something more artistic and more, more beautiful about the how the prints look, the Polaroids look compared to the Instax. How do you feel about that whole sort of thing?
The way I describe this is it's like having a nice Toyota Corolla fresh off the lot versus like a 71 Volkswagen Beetle with the Venetian blinds and the roof rack and then the avocado green paint job. I used to own a Beetle like that.
Nice.
Right? They'll both get you from point A to point B. One will do it in a certain style and will turn more hip. Right?
Yeah.
If you pull out an SX70 at a party versus a dumpy looking Instax Mini, I guarantee you there's going to be one that gets more questions, right? Because they are there's something in the field of design called haptics, which is the feel of something, right? It's how something feels to use. And the haptic feedback that one gets from using an SX70, having an SLR viewfinder and being able to focus close, and the haptic feedback of like a 600 with a little pop-up flash and a peel-apart camera, like you can't replicate that because there's only one type of camera that was designed like that, right? Because of patents and copyright law and stuff, they couldn't copy that design. So because there's big lawsuits involved, Kodak tried it in the 80s, got the pantsuit off them. So
that's right.
So it's very hard to describe, and it's not really a tangible thing that technically exists beyond a theoretical nature, but there is just something different about using a Polaroid versus an Instax camera. And like they're both good for different things. Like Instax, the quality of the film is amazing. It's like a 35mm print, right? But the kind of quality that you get from what has now become of Impossible Project is a little different, and it's different because they've had this very awkward start where they had to make a type of film with no ingredients available to them that would make it good. So they've had to reverse engineer, and I think that kind of retro sort of very vivid aesthetic people just really like. It's the same reason that people love old Kodachrome photos.
Yeah, sure.
It's not true to life, but it's what we know from the National Geographic magazines, right? We can all imagine the Maasai Bushman with the bright red robe standing in the lush green forest shot on Kodachrome, and it's just got that certain aesthetic and and it's not true to life at all. It's like it's like this vivid hypercolor 70s grindhouse film look that it's just very different. So but certainly for me, the type of camera itself is just radically different. Like if you shoot an SX70, it is literally unlike any camera that's ever not just any instant camera. It's unlike any other camera that exists in the world. Nothing has been or come since that remotely resembles it in any way, shape, or form. So that I think is very, very interesting.
Yeah. Now, speaking of other cameras, I've got a couple more Polaroid questions, but while we're speaking about other cameras, what are your other, obviously you've got a deep love for Polaroid, but what are your other sort of go-to cameras and lenses and things like that?
Yeah, so over the years, I've owned just about anything you could think of, because we all get the gas, right? The gear acquisition syndrome, and I discovered that the cure for gas is simply just to buy everything that exists. Try it all, and then you realize you don't need any of it. So that's what I did, and I just had hundreds of film cameras at one point, and I've long since sold off the vast majority of them. But in that 7 or 8 year journey, I was really able to narrow it down to a few just really personal favorites. So for medium format, hands down, the only camera you'll ever need in your entire life, and if you disagree with me, you're just simply wrong, is the Mamiya D220. It is a little large, it's a little heavy, okay, I'll agree, but it's not that much heavier than a Rolleiflex, right? Sure. We're talking a few hundred grams. But what you gain in a slight extra size and a teeny bit more weight is macro focusing, a camera that's built like a tank, and a camera that's a TLR with interchangeable shutters and viewfinders. That doesn't exist with anything. It's so unique. And not only that, but you can, as a result of those shutters being modular, you can install custom lenses. So I have a Mamiya C220 that rocks twin Rolleiflex f2.8 Zeiss planars. Wow. Right?
Yeah.
And that is the best camera. Like, I don't care what you say, Hasselblad, whatever, I wouldn't touch it. Give me my C220 with a reflex viewer and those twin planar lenses, and oh man, that is, it's just the best. Like, and what I like about it, I have this very interesting and very specific approach to things that I want to own, and that because I'm a repairman, I only really want to own things that I know are going to be reliable, or that I can most likely fix if it breaks, or at least adjust if it breaks. And the Mamiya C series, if your shutter breaks, well, just swap out a different shutter. It's interchangeable, right? And then while you're getting repaired, you just use one of your other lenses. If you need a new body because it falls off a cliff or something, whatever, they're pretty cheap. They're modular. You don't need to replace the whole thing. You can just replace parts of it at once as they break. And I really love that. So medium format, hands down, there is no better camera than the Mamiya C220. Don't let people tell you they're big. Don't let people tell you that they're heavy. They're really not. And if you're complaining about that, you shouldn't be shooting medium format. That is end of discussion. And then in 35 millimeter lens, my probably two favorite go-tos. I've got a Canon A1, not the AE one, the Canon A1, the black one. Yeah, and I've got that with a motor drive. That was my first ever 35mm SLR that I bought.
Nice.
And holy crap, Matt, has the price of those shot up into the upper stratosphere. I paid 250 Australian dollars for body, motor winder, flash, and 4 lenses.
Wow. 4 lenses. Wow.
Mint condition. Like everything was mint. It was like untouched from the 80s.
Yeah.
Now it's like just the lens is worth 250. It's absolutely ridiculous how much the price has shot up. So I love that as my go-to 35mm. They're just awesome, bulletproof. I like the electronic exposure. Yes, okay, it is battery dependent, but whatever, just bring some spares. And then my other favorite 35mm camera is the Leica M5.
Nice. The one they call the ugly one.
The ugly one. And
I don't think it is.
It's funny because when you speak to people that like own the Leica M5, they kind of want everyone to believe that they're the rubbish ugly one. So
Yeah. Because keep the prices a bit lower.
Yeah, keep the prices a bit. Although they've climbed up again. When I paid for my Leica M5, I paid $660 for mine.
Wow,
which is just stupidly cheap for a black 3-lug. And I have taken that thing everywhere. It's just so bulletproof. And when people use an M5, like after using an M6 or an M4 or an M3, they will generally 90% of the time admit like, oh yeah, it's better.
Really?
Yeah. They're just a better camera in the at least if you've got large hands, the position of the film advance, the position of the shutter speed selection, the viewfinder, for example, has a match needle exposure, which allows you to see how much over or under you're exposing. So on the fly, you really get this feeling of how your shot's going to look up. You go, oh, right, I need 2 stops over. You can do that without taking your eye off the viewfinder.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I don't even think they're ugly. I think they look really cool.
They're nice.
They just have they have this really utilitarian view. The only thing that makes them look ugly is if you put kind of like a small to medium-sized lens, it looks a bit out of proportion.
Sure.
If you put a big chunky lens hood on it, it goes back to looking amazing.
Yeah. And what lens is your go-to lens for the M5?
My go-to lens for the M5, I've got a collection of Zeiss, the modern Zeiss ZM series glass.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Everything from the 21mm compact to the 85 telephoto. So I don't have the whole set, but I've got a majority of all the important ones. I would say I've got 2 favorite lenses. One is a custom-made pancake lens that I had made from MS Optical.
Oh.
It uses a 35mm f2.8 taken from a Pentax point and shoot.
Yeah, wow.
Which is actually a sonar design. So it's a sonar pancake lens. Very, very unique, very interesting render. And something that I had made, but there's probably a story for another podcast. But I would say that the Zeiss ZM 50mm f1.5 sonar is just the best lens. That and the 35mm f2 planar.
Yep.
Those two, like, you don't need any more lenses. If you want to just get Zeiss ZM lenses, the 35 f2 planar is just the best all-rounder lens. It's stupidly sharp. The bokeh is really neutral and just very creamy.
Yeah.
And the 50mm sonar, the bokeh on that is out of this world. Like wide open at f1.5, it's like, how like, how they say like, a photographer, it's the photographer that makes the photo. It's not about the tools. It's not about the gear. Trust me, if you have the 50mm 1.5 sonar, you're instantly an excellent photographer. Because it'll do all the heavy lifting for you. Yeah. You just all you gotta do is nail focus, and it'll look good. I promise you.
Nice.
Especially with portraits.
Yeah.
So it's a good way of faking people into thinking you're an excellent photographer.
Yeah, excellent. And that one that you had, the custom one from the point and shoot lens. What Pentax point and shoot was that from? Like an SBO Mini or something? I'm struggling to think of it.
It was from a Pentax PC35AF-M.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got one of those hanging around here somewhere. Yep. So that classic 80s, very boxy
the classic
plastic.
80s chunky. And so it turns out it's all like a sealed unit, the lens, but it is a 5-element sonar design.
Oh wow. I've only shot a couple of rolls with mine, and I haven't grown to love it. I love point and shoots, but I haven't grown to love it yet. But I've got another roll in there now.
And the reason that you probably haven't loved it is I've owned them too. I had three of them over the years because, 7 years ago, they were worth nothing. They were a $5 camera. Mm-hmm. And I personally love the look and the aesthetic of them. But the autofocus is so hit and miss. Like it's like you got a 1 out of 4 chance getting some focus. Yeah. And because it always stops down the aperture, you never get to see the character of the lens come through. But if you actually have manual control of the focus and manual control of the aperture, well, all of a sudden it unlocks the potential of what is otherwise this undiscovered gem of a lens. So now watch all the prices go stupidly high on eBay for anyone listening to this podcast. I'll be like, all right, everyone invest. PC35AF, here we come.
That's right.
But when you can actually use it manually, you realize like, oh, this is actually like a really amazing lens. So
the other reason I don't use it as much is because I did drop it the very first time I had it. The battery draw was already dodgy, which a lot of those early 80s point and shoots, the battery draws are dodgy, especially the Canons. But I dropped it and it went from bad to worse. And I now have a big thing of gaffer tape on the bloody thing because that's the only way it functions now, with a big thing of gaffer tape. So I can't even sell it really because it's got this ugly bit of gaffer tape on.
You're listening to Matt Loves Cameras.
Polaroid Go. Now, of course, details of the new Polaroid Go small format film were leaked a couple of months ago. And initially I was a bit, I wasn't that taken on it. And then the announcement came out. I was excited. Then I realized how big the things were and I'm disappointed. But then I see people on Facebook with them and I'm excited. I don't think I'm going to buy one, but it has been a real roller coaster for me in terms of me liking it or not. Yeah. What's your reaction to the whole thing?
I 100% agree with you. And I've done, for anyone that wants to follow my Facebook page for more info about this, I've done 2 live streams where I talked about my feelings for the Polaroid Go. You may or may not know that the reason that Spectra film was killed off was to make Polaroid Go. So Spectra has died and been reincarnated as the mini-me of Spectra. My thoughts were initially, like I've got a few thoughts. My first thought is about Polaroid as a company and the business model. And then my second thought is about the camera itself, because really I have no qualms with it except for one thing, which I'll get into in a minute. But in terms of the company, after seeing the response to Polaroid Go, I do personally feel that this may end up being a very good business decision for Model, because clearly the kawaii cute market, like, let's be honest, it's really cute. Okay. Yep. It's ridiculously cute. It's way smaller than I ever thought it would be. And now that I've seen public response, I think it'll be a good seller. And if that makes Polaroid earn more money and put more money into research and development, awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But part of me was very scared because it seemed like history was repeating itself. So we had Impossible Project fronted by Florian Capps, who was sort of the equivalent of the Dr. Edwin Land. And then he left the company and Polaroid all of a sudden became, right, how do we no longer innovate? How do we make money? Okay. So there was nothing really happening, no real announcements for a while. They killed off Spectra. All these cameras that they keep releasing were just sort of what I call the Malibu Stacy with a new hat. Like, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Nothing's really exciting. Like, some colored borders, great, like whatever. There was nothing like fresh coming out. And if you look back at Polaroid's past, the same thing happened. Land was booted out of the company. Yeah. And we went from having SX70s and Spectras to how can we make the cheapest 600 camera? Yep. What's the next 600 we can do in a special edition? Oh, we got the Legoland. Oh, we'll do the Tasmanian Tiger. What are kids? Kids want small. Let's do the iZone. Let's do Polaroid 500. And like, they were all flops. And meanwhile, during the 90s, when all this was happening, Polaroid was missing out on all this innovation. They were missing out on photo developing labs. They were missing out on the digital camera revolution, because all they were interested in was flogging the same film that they'd had for years with cheaper and ever increasingly cheaper cameras, until they went belly up, because they stopped innovating. And my worry is that they were just doing a repeat. I'm like, oh God, they're just doing the same thing, but with a smaller format of film. It's iZone all over again. But the difference here is Instax Mini has established themselves as a market leader in the instant game, and having something that compares with Instax Mini, but in that square form factor, in such a cute package, is going to work out. I think. I mean, we'll see what time does, but from the response so far, I do think it's going to work. And if that means Polaroid can do better things, awesome. My only complaint with the camera, and as far as I know, let's look this up. So I'm just going to Google this: Polaroid Go battery. As far as I know,
USB.
Yeah, it's USB, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Which drives me nuts. I've got a Polaroid 1 Step Plus, and every time I go to use it, the battery's dead. And of course, you can't just take it out on the day out, because you go charge it for an hour. So
that is So look, they say it'll last 15 packs, but I have big beef with rechargeable batteries. Not because I have anything against them in theory. I think they're great.
Yeah.
But make them user replaceable, for crying out loud. Don't bury them inside the camera and have a USB charger. Because A, when it runs out of battery, now you got to go find a wall wart and plug it in and charge it. Or you got to carry one of those external battery charging bricks, which aren't very efficient. But a battery that's rechargeable only has a finite life. It doesn't last forever. Eventually, it'll lose the ability to hold charge. And when you've got that, you're going to have a tiny, cute little paperweight, because there's no way to take this thing apart to replace the battery. And what that is it's an example of planned obsolescence, just like they do with smartphones these days. And they'll say bollocks marketing nonsense that's like, oh, well, it'll make it waterproof, or, you know, third-party manufacturers won't be able to install dodgy batteries now, and that kind of stuff. It's all a load of crap. It's just because they want you to buy another camera in 3 years.
That's right. That's right. So the funny thing is, though, if you could take out the battery and put a rechargeable battery in, they could sell extra batteries to people.
Yeah, exactly.
As part of a package. So it's weird, isn't it, that they wouldn't do that?
It's really weird. I've got a DSLR sitting right next to me with rechargeable batteries that I have spares for.
That's right.
because I keep a set spare charge, so that when I'm in the middle of my product shoots, taking photos of what I'm about to sell online, and my camera runs out of battery, I don't have to then, sit there and wait for it to charge for 45 minutes like a muppet. I can just take them out, put the new ones in. And I would love these new cameras to have that functionality. And there's no reason they can't just install a little door with two little brass terminals in there for a battery to click into. There is literally no excuse for not doing that. Absolutely none. And there are off-the-shelf lithium-ion batteries you can buy all over the world. There are already tried and true designs that are out there. There is absolutely no excuse, other than you wanting to sell another camera in 3 years, for not making a battery rechargeable. I hate it. This is not just the Polaroid Go. This is anything. Like, I've got a Samsung Galaxy S8, right? And the battery on that, I'm charging it right now off my laptop, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to talk for as long as we have. You know, the S5 had a usable replacer battery. I remember when I went to London a few years back, when I had my old S3 Samsung, I had 3 batteries for that.
Wow.
That would last me 48 hours of constant use. By the time I figured I could get lost anywhere and find my way out, right? Because I had always had spare batteries. It just gets me. It's so frustrating. And I could rant about it for hours and hours. It's the only qualm. Otherwise, I think it is stupidly cute. It's really adorable. Okay, the film is small, but whatever. We know why they're doing that. It's to counter the Instax mini market and appeal to the youth and the Southeast Asian market, which really go for that kind of stuff. Just like I don't like things. I don't like things that aren't user replaceable in terms of power, because it's just nonsense. There's no excuse for it. And I'm not sure if this phone has all that if this camera has all that smartphone connectivity business. I know some of their One-Step Plus, you can engage,
you can control the shutter speed and stuff. I don't think it does. I think it's more of a basic model, but I could be wrong.
I think it is. I haven't read much into it. As I said, I probably won't buy one. I'll probably use one at a party one day. I probably won't. Like I've already got an SX70 with an open SX70 PCB. Like I've already got the creme de la creme best.
Yeah, that's right.
Best Polaroid available. Where was I going with this? I've completely lost my train of thought.
That's all right. I was going to say the only other thing that I'm the same as you. I hope it's a success. I don't think I'll buy one at the current price point, but I hope it's a success and it does well. But the only thing that struck me as weird is this: they're targeting that Instax mini crowd, right? Which typically is that tween, that sort of younger crowd. How are you going to explain to 10, 12-year-olds? I mean, I've got 2 kids, but how are you going to explain to them? Oh, you know, when this image comes out, you have to hide it in your pocket for 15 minutes because, of course, Polaroid film is more light sensitive, you know, these days than it used to be. And certainly there's no issues with Instax. 60, 90 seconds later, it's fine. But Polaroids, they tell you to shield the image. And how are they going to get that across to young kids? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, fortunately, it's nowhere near as bad as it was in the early days of Impossible. Like you can leave them develop in a room face side up. Direct sunlight, I definitely wouldn't do, but it's not so bad these days. Like back in the days, it was like, holy crap, shield it like it's a vampire, or your photo will burst into flames and you'll get a whitewash.
Yeah.
It's not so bad these days, but it's definitely, look, that's, I guess, the one flaw, but at least with the film being smaller, it'll fit into your pocket, Matt.
That's true. That's very true.
I remembered where I was going with the smartphone connectivity.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think that kind of stuff is cute and novel.
Mm.
But I also question the longevity of it, because who knows what we'll be using in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Like we've like Bluetooth might not be a thing anymore.
No.
Right? We might have moved on to Red Tooth or whatever is next. Like think about just how many Gs we've been through, like 2G, 3G, 4G, we're on 5G now. 5 years from now we'll be on 6G. Like you just don't know. I like designs. My personal favorite kind of design is something that is simple, that will last if the world turns into a Mad Max apocalypse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
still keep working.
If the comet hits Earth and we're all like, I want my stuff to still be working. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
what was that?
That's me.
You know, the Doomsday Book, which was around the 11th century in England. They did this, when the Normans took over England, they did this, they did every farm, every noble, every person, every cow, they wrote down in this big book. I think in the 80s, the BBC put it on. What are those gold data discs called? Do you remember what they're called?
Oh, you're talking about laser discs.
Laser discs, that's it. Yeah. So
you're talking about the BBC microcomputer with the Domesday. With the Domesday laser disc.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then within a few years of them releasing it, it was completely obsolete. And yet the original book you can still read. It's interesting how sometimes to try and keep up with technology, we do something new and cool, but actually it's not, because it's obsolete within a few years, and the old ways still work better. So I've got a couple more questions, but I guess we've got to finish this up soon, because I better get back to work, and I'm sure you've got some live videos to do and stuff like that.
Yeah, but, I do, and I got someone picking up a computer I refurbished too, so I'll head off.
Have we got time for one more question?
I got time for a few. He's coming in 35 minutes.
Okay, cool. So I also saw on your Facebook page that you also repair other types of vintage electronics. So would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as I said, I'm very much a tinkerer at heart. And over the years, I've refurbished things not limited to record players, turntables. I actually have an amplifier that I'll be refurbishing, hopefully, which I found on the hard rubbish.
Wow.
with its cord cut, so I'm planning on breathing life into that. I've refurbished, at the moment, I'm doing this whole run of Windows 98 like gaming PCs for old DOS games.
Wow.
I've refurbished Commodore 64 computers. Funny that you just mentioned the Domesday with the Laserdisc. I actually have a BBC microcomputer.
Oh, wow.
That I use for old 80s BBC micro games. So I've refurbished those.
What about a VIC-20? That was our first computer, a VIC-20.
Yeah, I've never done a VIC-20, but I've done a Commodore 64, and cool. I own a Commodore 64.
Nice.
I was going to say you're on Zoom right now, so you can see audio, but I know no one watching the podcast will be able to. But here in the
oh wow, that's awesome. Yeah, lovely. Yeah,
there's keyboards.
Awesome.
You love the old clacky mechanical keys, but look, I'll do a lot of stuff. With that said, I don't like doing things commercially for people that I can't guarantee I'll be able to refurbish.
Sure.
I like to think of myself as being relatively clever and able to accomplish a lot, but if I've never done something before, I don't want to guarantee to someone like, oh yeah, I'll be able to fix your XYZ, whatever,
sure.
When I've never worked on it. Like people are like, oh, could you refurbish a Mamiya RB67 for me? Someone said that to me the other day, and I was like, look, honestly, never done it. I wouldn't really know where to start.
Yeah.
In theory, maybe, but I don't want to try in case I break it. Because it's,
sure.
I feel like I've been doing SX70s for 9 years, and I've only just gotten good at it,
Yeah. Well, I think you got it very good at it a few years before now, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I do all right.
Yeah. Excellent. So if anyone wants to, do you only accept repairs from Australia, or people in New Zealand and Singapore sending you their repairs as well?
Anywhere in the world. If someone wants to send me a camera, I'm happy to get it and give it a look over.
Yep.
Like I said, I think a little earlier in the video, if I can't fix it, I don't charge,
Yep.
right? Because, it's the odd chance that something will come my way, which is just beyond my ability to repair, or I don't have parts for it or whatever.
Yep.
So no fix, no charge. But otherwise, I'm happy to take just about any SX70 restoration job on, with the addition of some other Polaroids. I also do speed graphics, Graflex cameras.
Yep.
I can do some medium and large format shutters, like Mamiya C series, for example, which I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
But yeah, look, if anyone's in doubt of what I can fix, they can ask. Worst case is I'll say, no, it's not something that I do. But yeah, definitely if someone wants to send stuff anywhere from Australia, it's simply as easy as getting in touch with me.
Yep.
I give you my address, you send it down, or you can meet me in person if you're a local. If you're here in Melbourne, Victoria, feel free to come over to the workshop, chill out. I'll show you what I'll do to the camera and pull it apart. And yeah, it's as easy as basically if you can get it to me, I'll have a look at it and I'll try and fix it for you. And there's about a 95% chance that it'll be up and running again.
Excellent. And the best way to get in touch with you is through your Facebook page, is it?
Yeah, look, that's probably the easiest way. Or you can call my mobile number, all the details of which are either on my website, theinstantcameraguy.com.
Oh, cool. I didn't know you had a website. Is that relatively new?
Yeah, as of the last sort of year, a friend of mine made it for me. My friend Cameron. So it do have a website. I also have an Instagram.
Yep.
You can find my contact information. The easiest way, like if you want to get the most information in the shortest period of time, just give me a call. Like call my mobile. Like I'm pretty sure that's what that call was that interrupted our podcast. Is someone's calling me?
Yeah.
Like because it'll take me a 20-second phone call to figure out what's wrong with your camera. It's like pages of text.
yeah, absolutely.
Because the diagnosis I can often do over the phone just by listening to your SX70, like a horse whisperer or something. And I've done that. I've literally told people, like, put your SX70 up to the phone, press it, and I'll hear what it's doing.
Yeah.
So I can sometimes diagnose over the phone. But yeah, look, you can give me a call, you can drop me a message on Instagram or Facebook or something like that, and we'll sort something out. And if I can't help, well, I'll try and refer you to somewhere else that can. But odds are I can get it working.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks so much for your time today, Jake. I've really enjoyed talking to you and listening to all your Polaroid knowledge. I really wish I was mechanically minded. I'm useless. So I'm in awe of people like you who can do amazing things with these vintage cameras and electronics.
Look, I'll say to what I say for everyone else. Actually, this is what Dr. Edwin Land, his philosophy was, and I'm paraphrasing here. I can't remember the exact quote, but he said that anything is accomplishable with enough time, money, and concentration.
Sure,
so don't you ever doubt yourself, Matt. If you really put your mind to it, I'm sure you could do this too. It just takes a lot of time.
Given it a few more decades, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It's like learning an instrument. You just need to keep going and get that practice in.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Jake. I will be giving out all your Facebook, Instagram details with this show and the website details. But that's great. Thank you so much for your time today.
Anytime, Matt. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Thanks once again to Jake. I really enjoyed the chat with him. And if you have an SX70 camera or another classic Polaroid camera that you need repaired, you can find Jake in the following ways. You can head over to Facebook, facebook.com/Instant Camera Guy, and you can check out his amazing Facebook Live videos. They really are insightful and interesting. Even if you're a complete idiot when it comes to repairing things like me, I still find them quite fascinating. And certainly if you repair cameras, I'm sure that you will find them quite amazing. So check out that, facebook.com/Instant Camera Guy. Jake's website is theinstantcameraguy.com. And certainly don't forget to tell him that you heard him on Matt Loves Cameras.